For many, Christmas brought with it the feeling of joy and wonder, but there was nothing quite like the seasonal spirit that came with celebrating the holiday in the small town of Settersum. If being nestled deep within the heart of the Appalachian Mountains gave a town one thing, it was a devotion to tradition. And few traditions were as eagerly awaited as getting pictures with Santa Claus at the local mall. Every year, my mother took me and my little brother to get our pictures taken with the jolly home invader on the worst possible day, Christmas Eve. She said the magic of the season was strongest on this day. Personally, I think she enjoyed the misery it brought us. "Do we really have to do this?" I asked. "I'm going to be 13 in less than 3 months, and I don't even believe in Santa. I know it's just some fat guy in a cheap suit." "It is?" my little brother gasped and tugged my mother's coat sleeve. "Mom, is Santa really just a fat guy in a suit? Is he not real?" "No, Joshua, that's ridiculous. Of course Santa is real. Your brother just likes to be a crank because he thinks he's too old to get pictures with Santa," Mom said. "I am too old," I replied, spinning back around to see if the man in red had came into view. "Well, after this year, you don't have to do it again. It's a tradition that the kids in the family get their pictures made with Santa until they're teenagers. That's how it's always been, and that's how it always will be." Even though I couldn't see the expression on her face, I could hear in her voice that there was no getting out of this. So I pulled my phone out of my pocket to zone out until the nightmare was over. After what felt like an eternity had passed, I heard, "Next." I looked up from my phone just as an acne-scarred teenager dressed as an elf pulled back the velvet rope barrier. A trail of astroturf wound through a forest of plastic trees littered in gaudy decorations. "Go on, I'll wait on the other side," my mother said. As I made my way through the tinseled labyrinth, the sound of the cliché Christmas music from the mall began to get drowned out by much more ominous Christmas music coming from within the forest itself. It was as if the music were being played on a warped record. The inconsistent speed of the holiday tunes brought with it an eeriness that gave me chills. Occasionally, I thought I could hear murmurs coming from the trees themselves, but decided it was just the ambience of the mall crowd. I continued on around a few sharp curves through the trees until I found myself standing in front of a large candy cane throne. Sitting upon the throne was a robust crimson-clad man with a noticeably fake beard.
"Come, my boy, come sit on Santa's lap," the man said.
"Fine, let's get this over with." I hopped up on the man's knee and realized he wasn't actually as large as he appeared. In fact, he was quite the opposite. He was rail thin. I could feel I was sitting on the bones of his leg. His suit must have been stuffed to give him his jovial appearance.
"Now, what would you like for Christmas, Matthew?"
"I don't care, I just want to leave." Wait. A lump formed in the back of my throat. "How do you know my name?" The shakiness of my voice did little to hide my apprehension.
"I know much about you. I know that you don't believe in Santa."
His hot breath permeated the air and stank of cigarettes and gingerbread.
"But you know what, Matthew?"
"What?" I said. My meek voice was barely able to form the word.
"Santa believes in you,"
he said, tapping his bony finger against my chest.
"And since this is the last year you will be coming to see me, I think we ought to make it a very special Christmas. Now smile and say Frosty."
He pulled his finger away from my sternum and aimed it towards the forest. Emerging from the trees was another one of Santa's helpers. He pulled a camera from behind his back and said, "Frosty." As a reaction, I threw my hands up and shouted, "No, I don't want my picture taken." I heard a gasp come from the cameraman as he ran back into the woods. Santa shoved me from his lap onto the floor, and with a smile that bared far too many nicotine-stained teeth, he said,
"Oh, that just won't do, Matthew. It seems you will be going on the naughty list this year, along with the other children who don't like tradition. Now run along. Your mother is waiting."
I stood up, dusted off the plastic snow, and ran towards the trail that was opposite the first. An arrow-shaped sign pointed down the path that read, "This way." I emerged from the trees to the sound of my mother's voice. "Well, what did you ask for?" she said. "Nothing." The gleeful expression on her face changed into one of frustration. "Nothing?" she asked. "This is your last year to get something from Santa and you waste it by not asking for anything? That's just great. Did you at least get a picture for me?" "I didn't want to get a stupid picture, and besides, Santa was weird," I said. "I swear if we don't get at least a picture from your last Christmas, no one's getting a present this year." My mother snatched my wrist and began to march me to the other side of the trees where we had first entered. "What do you mean, last Christmas?" I asked. "I mean your last chance to ask Santa for a present. You know what I mean." But by the unusual tone of voice and the vice-like grip on my wrist, I wasn't exactly sure what she meant. She didn't seem frustrated anymore. She seemed panicked. As my wide-eyed mother darted through the crowd with me in tow, I realized I hadn't seen Josh since we came out of the forest. "Mom, where's Josh?" I said. She didn't respond. She just kept tugging me along until we finally reached the other side of the trees. "Stay here. I'm going to talk to Santa's helper to get a picture," she said. The significant change in my mother's demeanor had made my stomach turn. My mouth began to water as if I were on the verge of vomiting, and I was fighting back tears. "Mom, I have to go to the restroom," I said. She stopped dead in her tracks and slowly turned around. Her wide eyes had narrowed and were fixated on me as she bent down to bring herself to eye level. "Go use the restroom and come straight back." She then snapped back around and approached the elf-dressed teen. I didn't have to use the restroom. I just had to get away from whatever that was. I had never seen her so angry and scared at the same time. I walked across the mall to the long hallway. At the end of the hallway were the restrooms. I stepped inside and immediately felt a weight being lifted from my shoulders. I turned on the faucet and splashed some cold water on my face. The brisk sensation helped fight back the churning in my stomach. As I dried my face, I smelled an odor that was very alien in a public restroom. I inhaled deeply in an attempt to identify the smell. "Is that gingerbread?" I said to myself. I tossed my paper towel into the garbage can and made my way to the door, but began to feel faint. I stumbled to the wall, laid my back against it, and slid down and sat on the floor. The smell of gingerbread had intensified to a sickeningly potent stench. The odor had my stomach once again in knots. As I sat on the floor and tried to focus my vision, the sound of booted feet against the tiled floor echoed from within the restroom. My breath caught in my throat as I saw 2 black leather boots with tarnished bronze buckles standing in the last stall. Suddenly, the stall door flew open, revealing a gangling arm draped in a red velvet sleeve. Dizzy as I was, I jumped to my feet and threw open the restroom door. I tried to sprint down the hall and back to the safety of the crowd, back to the safety of my mother. But my body was so heavy, and my head was so light. I fell forward as my vision began to darken. Glancing over my shoulder, the last image I saw was the gaunt face of Santa Claus craning out of the bathroom stall. And then everything went black. I awoke several hours later, still slightly dazed from fainting. The clock above the bathroom read 11:56 p.m. "It's almost midnight?" I asked aloud. My weak words echoed down the hallway and spilled into the empty mall. I stood on shaky legs and walked to the end of the hall. The doors leading outside had been chained shut, blocking my only way out. Did Mom leave me here? Surely she called the police, at the very least mall security. Oh God, Santa! The mall was silent, except for the sound of distant Christmas music. As the realization hit, I shouted, "My phone!" I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed the home button. I had no missed calls or messages. Has no one even tried to contact me? Where's Mom? I said to no one. The idea that I had been missing for nearly 10 hours and no one had even tried to locate me caused a dismal feeling to grow inside. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed Mom. After a few rings, I heard a voice come on the other line. I could barely hear it over the background noise of several voices. "Matthew?" my mother said. "Mom, I'm stuck in the mall. I don't know how to get out." "It's not time for you to get out yet, sweetheart. It's not Christmas," she said. Her words felt like needles dancing on my scalp. I looked at the time on my cell phone. 11:59 p.m. "What do you mean? What happens at Christmas?" I said. "You'll see. You had your chance to leave with me, to follow tradition just like your brother did. All you had to do was get your picture taken, Matthew. But now, Santa will be helping you," she said. The calmness of her voice made her words much more terrifying. "Oh, look at that. Midnight. Merry Christmas, honey." Then the line went dead. I tried calling her back, but my phone wouldn't respond. Static flickered across the screen moments before it went dark. The lights of the mall soon followed, and once again, everything went black. In the distance, I could see an orange glow coming from the west wing of the mall, coming from Santa's forest. I began to walk towards the light. My mind was screaming no, but my feet refused to listen. Soon after, I stood before the astroturf that led me to that ghastly smile so many hours ago. I started down the twisting path against my will. The inconsistent Christmas music was worse than before. I was terrified to continue, but I had no choice. Standing in front of the candy cane throne, I raised my head to meet the eyes of Santa Claus. Before, his visage was that of a thin old man, but now his wrinkled skin barely covered his skeletal face. Instead of eyes were empty voids. He still wore the red velvet shirt, but nothing more. Beyond the bottom of the shirt was a mass of writhing tentacles that lifted his upper body from the throne. He stared down at me from his towering figure.
"Hello again, Matthew,"
Santa said. His voice changed in the same monstrous way that his body did.
"Are you ready for your Christmas present?"
I was somehow able to say, "I don't want anything."
"I'm afraid that's unacceptable. You will be getting a gift, and it is one that I will be giving to you personally."
Suddenly, 3 tentacles shot out from the throng, wrapping themselves around my body and raising me to his face. I tried to gasp for air, but the crushing force of the slimy appendages made it impossible.
"I give you the gift of Christmas."
With that, a gout of black liquid sprayed from his mouth, covering my body and hardening to a thick plastic-like material. Santa slithered to the tree line and placed me among the fake forest. As the black substance continued to harden, I felt my bones begin to contort and snap. Small green hairs started sprouting from several tiny limbs that were growing from my body. I couldn't see. I couldn't hear. I don't know if I'm speaking these words or if I'm just thinking them. I don't know how long it's been since I was turned. But please, if you can hear me, get out of the plastic forest.